Pen pals. Data races against time to save the life of a little alien girl on a planet doomed for destruction. The Enterprise is entering a region of space that no one has been to before, which is refreshing.
Yeah, I appreciated that they were actually doing something like that.
Patrick Stewart manages to get some of his hobbies into the show.
The way he talks about horses is kind of creepy.
He does bring up a good point about betazoids and pets, though.
I would expect betazoids to be outstanding animal trainers.
We become too involved in the thoughts and shifting passions of the beast. We lose our way and get swept up in emotion.
All the planets in this area have unusually high levels of geological activity.
And Riker says that the planets live fast and die hard, but on a planetary scale, it would not be happening that fast.
Plus, the episode treats it like it all started all of a sudden with these people that are living on the planet. Presumably, in real life, would have been dealing with that for a long time.
The B-plot is Wesley is put in charge of his own team to survey the planet.
So they call Wesley in, they give him the job. I have a lot of respect for Picard when he says,
I respect an officer who is prepared to admit ignorance and ask a question, rather than one who out of pride will blunder blindly forward.
In real life, that's often the difference between a good leader and a shitty one.
Data is adjusting the sensors to basically be way better than they are as a personal project. Why not just have that be the norm? And with Data's sensor improvements, he detects a communication through the planetary interference.
He doesn't tell anybody about it.
When Data finally comes clean, he says he received the transmission 8 weeks ago. And the concept of time on the Enterprise is hard to convey, I suppose, in 45 minutes. I wouldn't have expected them to be there for 2 months.
Right, they definitely didn't portray that in a way that really came across to the audience.
So Data blatantly violates the Prime Directive, and Picard responds with the exact level of concern I would expect from a hypocrite like him.
Her society is aware that there is interstellar life.
No, sir.
Oops.
Data reveals that the planet is going to be destroyed like the other ones in the system, and suggests that they find a way to reverse total planetary destruction, which seems like a pretty tall order.
One of the things that bothers me the most about this episode is that Data is making these huge decisions all on his own, and we never find out exactly why or what he really thinks about things. They deal with the consequences, but not with the actions that caused them. There's a random scene of Riker hitting on a young officer in 10 Forward when Wesley comes in to ask his advice.
Wesley's trying to build his self-confidence, and shows that he's hesitant about making important decisions with his team. Riker responds by saying he should ask himself,
What would Picard do?
and I thought, probably immediately violate the Prime Directive.
The crew has a conversation about the Prime Directive. A lot of the characters have interesting perspectives, but the Prime Directive already exists. That is the stated protocol for what to do in a situation like this.
Worf, at one point, says,
The Prime Directive is not a matter of degrees. It is an absolute.
That seems like the way it was intended to be interpreted. I like how they take the time to actually discuss the Prime Directive, but it quickly turns into a discussion about fate, and basically if God exists or not. And then Picard made me angry when he said,
See, the Prime Directive has many different functions, not the least of which is to protect us. To prevent us from allowing our emotions to overwhelm our judgment.
Yeah, like you do all the time. This exact type of issue has had to come up hundreds, if not thousands of times in the history of Starfleet. Why is this time any different? So not only are they going to blatantly violate the Prime Directive during a routine Starfleet exercise, but they are going to figure out the near impossible task of changing the structure of an entire planet to do it. What if the next encounter is something a lot simpler, like relocating a group of people 100 miles away, or purifying a poisonous lake? If they do this, there is no reason why they should not do everything all the time, regardless of the Prime Directive.
Very true. When Data connects back to the planet, and Sarjenka happens to be calling right then, Picard decides to treat it as a cry for help, and do what he can to remedy the situation.
Starfleet is not an organization that ignores its own regulations when they become inconvenient.
Riker decides to send Data down to the planet, and the Data compounds that mistake by choosing to bring Sarjenka back up to the Enterprise.
When Data brings Sarjenka to the bridge, Picard yells at him, and Sarjenka has long fingers, which were distracting.
Between Mordok and Sarjenka and whatever, you just focused on hands way too much.
It was just distracting. They figure out how to fix the problem with the planets. Picard tells Pulaski to erase Sarjenka's memories, and Pulaski says,
I would have to scan for the age of the chemical links and try to find the relevant neurons.
And Picard just says, do your best. They're talking about messing with somebody's brain, and this is an alien that they are unfamiliar with.
And does her explanation mean that she can wipe anybody's brain with exact precision at will?
That's what it sounds like.
Dang. I wish I could have wiped my freaking memory of watching this episode.
So they erase her memories, beam her back down.
So let's walk through the sequence of events. Making initial contact with somebody. Continuing to do it for 8 weeks. Interfering with natural selection. Altering the geographic structure of an entire planet. Traveling down to the planet. Bringing somebody back up to the ship. Letting them watch you fix their planet. Leaving a piece of extraterrestrial technology with them after you leave. Maybe wiping their memory of the whole thing?
What good Starfleet officers.
Picard and Data's dumb talk made me so mad.
No apologies are necessary.
But you know that next time, they're going to say, oh, no, the Prime Directive, blah, blah, blah. And the part that made me laugh the most was when Picard said,
One of my officers, one of my friends, was troubled. I had to help. Beverly, the Prime Directive is not just a set of rules. It is a philosophy, and a very correct one. History has proved again and again that whenever mankind interferes with a less developed civilization, no matter how well-intentioned that interference may be, the results are invariably disastrous. Your whisper from the dark has now become a plea. We cannot turn our backs. The results are invariably disastrous.
Pen pals. Overall?
Good discussion about the Prime Directive, even though it didn't make sense in context, and they just violate everything anyway. But the entire episode should have focused more on Data, and why he's doing what he's doing, and how human it makes him. But they just gloss over all of that, and just focus on the Prime Directive aspects. Then you've got Wesley's subplot, which wasn't bad, but doesn't come to anything. I'd give this episode a B-, just because it had some good discussion ideas.
You thought this one was that good?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's where we're going to differ a lot on this one, too. I give this one a D-. Okay, so this is an episode based around the Prime Directive, and at first I was pumped, because it's about time. But I disliked how they act like this is the first time this issue has come up. It seems like they let natural selection play out, except when one person in a position of authority personally has a problem with it. What is the point of rules if we don't follow them when we don't feel like it? And they quickly fall down the slippery slope of saying, well, we already did the one thing, we might as well do the next thing too, with no logical reasoning, and it snowballs through the entire episode. The entire conflict was of their own making and their own hypocrisy, but then they act all mad and inconvenienced about the events as they transpire. They expect us to let emotion and sentimentality override logic and good sense. The only part I liked was Wesley's little side plot, and that didn't even resolve. D-.
No, I agree with most of what you're saying. I did have a lot of problems with it. I think I was thinking of this episode more in terms of what's in just this one episode, and it doesn't make sense for them to have this discussion at all. Again, they should have their protocol for exactly what to do. I did enjoy the discussions in this episode. I think I enjoyed it more for just things that I liked about it, more than it actually being a good episode, which now that I think about it is not how I should rate this episode. I'll go down to a C-. You've persuaded me somewhat.
The result is invariably disastrous.